never achieve balance by doing extreme things. In this episode, I want to talk about how health is never built by doing extreme things, but it is in fact destroyed by extreme things. The three examples that I really want to call out in today's episode is cold plunging, followed by heated workouts and or saunas, and also fasting. Those are three things that have become really popular that I think are really detrimental to people's long-term health. And I want to get into the Chinese medicine physiology about why. Let's talk about cold plunging first. So when I was a college cross-country runner, we would go to the training room after practice and get submerged up to our waist after practice to somehow recover. It doesn't feel good to get in ice cold water, but it was helpful in the recovery process. And then fast forward many years later, when I was running half marathons and marathons and doing a triathlon training, I found the same to be true. After a 20-mile run, I would go home and then do an ice bath. And I did find it to be very helpful. I don't think that's a good idea any longer. I also don't truly think it's a great idea to be doing long endurance events. And if we are, I don't think we need to be doing them successively. There are people who constantly are training for long distance races. And I think that is a really tremendous risk to your health. Also a topic for another episode, perhaps. But now, people who aren't even doing endurance events are cold plunging and ice bathing. And I want to get into the reasons people say they're doing this and also the Chinese medicine physiology behind it so that you can understand that it's not a recommendation willy-nilly that I'm making when I say, please don't do this. It's not good for your health. So I've heard people talk about obviously reducing inflammation and therefore speeding recovery when they have been doing long runs or long workouts, hard workouts, whatever. And then also, I've heard people talk about how it builds resilience, which I am in 100% agreement. I think that's a wonderful thing. Building resilience, tolerating discomfort. In general, what we do in our lives is try to keep ourselves comfortable. We climate control our homes, our cars. We carry snacks with us. We carry water, right? Like in general, we're trying to keep ourselves comfortable. So I agree with the idea of tolerating discomfort. However, let's get into what is actually happening, even when considering recovery from an inflammation standpoint, as well as tolerating discomfort. So from a Chinese medicine perspective, a very basic one, we have yin and yang energy. Yin is going to be the cooler energy, the rest and digest energy. Yang is going to be your get shit done, your sympathetic nervous system. It's going to be hotter energy. You see why we need a balance, right? If we don't have enough yang energy, we would be blobs on the couch every day. But if we don't have enough yin energy, we can't go to sleep at night. And in a 24-hour cycle, the sun begins coming up in the morning. Yin time has just or is ending. Yin is nighttime, yang time is daytime. So the sun begins rising and we're increasing yang. And then after noon, 12 o'clock, we are moving back toward yin as the sun starts to go down, right? So hopefully that helps you just kind of visualize. If you think about the path of the sun every day, what's happening, that is also a representation of yin and yang. So we always need it to be in balance to each other. And when we are doing endurance sports, when we are doing high intensity workouts, when we are drinking coffee, when we are drinking alcohol, when we are overstimulated, all of these things are raising our yang energy. Okay, so we've already talked about how we need it to be in balance, and we're really pushing hard on the yang in this case, in these cases. So then we think about what is happening to the yin. In order for yang to rise, we have to have the support of yin. Otherwise, it is a hot mess. So in the case of migraines, that is yang energy rising to such an extreme because it is not rooted with sufficient yin. Another example would be the person who dies on a marathon course having a stroke, and everyone says, oh my gosh, that is such a surprise. Bob used to run 10 miles a day. How in the world could he have a stroke? That makes perfect sense. Bob is the perfect candidate to have a stroke Because in addition to that, what they're going to say following, he runs 10 miles a day. He never ate any fat. He always observed a low fat diet. He ate, lean chicken and vegetables, or perhaps he was vegan. That is a recipe for a stroke from a Chinese medicine perspective, because you are gunning the yang. You are not supporting the yin because your diet is devoid of fats. Oftentimes, it's also void of whole grains, which build the digestive organs from a Chinese medicine perspective and allow you to build more medium. And medium is exactly yin. Okay, so you're over relying on your yang energy. You're pushing your limits, which also ties into the resilience piece, tolerating discomfort. In case you're new here, which you probably are because I'm new to this show, I was a former recreational endurance athlete. I was also a spin instructor and I owned a spin studio. I'm Schwinn trained. I love it. I think it's amazing. And I have not done it in years. And when I had a studio, it nearly killed me because it's too much yang energy. So despite that I was making bone broth all the time and I was eating congee is really wet cooked rice that is really known in Chinese culture. Really good for your digestive organs. It's really health supportive, but those are not common practices in America. So as we're overstimulated all the time, we're running 100 miles a week to train for a race. And now marathons aren't even good enough. We have to do endurance races that are 35 and 50 miles a race or 100 miles a race, right? So those races are over relying on the yang energy. Then the yang has to have yin to support it. But where do you get yin from? We're all born with yin, but we have to support it and we have to build it. And if we're not building it and we're over relying on the yang, then it's decreasing in quantity and quality. And so it can't support that yang activity. So Bob goes out to run the marathon and dies on the course because his yang is so unsupported that it literally just rises without support, and that results in a stroke. So that kind of thing is not a surprise from a Chinese medicine perspective. So when people are cold plunging, they are suppressing their yang energy. Okay, so you might be thinking right now, well, MG, you just told me that we don't want to raise our yang energy too much because that is exhausting, because it depletes the yin, it's too overstimulating. Yes, I did say that, but remember, what comes down will naturally go back up because yang energy rises. Its heat rises, so does yang energy. So we've suppressed it by getting into an ice bath. It's going to have to come back up. And when it does, you're going to feel amazing, but it's also going to tax your yin. So the reasons that lead many people to cold plunge is because they're already yin deficient. So the person who has anxiety and is trying to keep their mental health in check and is using cold plunging. One of the few reasons contributing to anxiety from a Chinese medicine physiological perspective is that there is not enough yin to root the yang emotion. So the brain just keeps turning and turning and turning. We're thinking of the same thing over and over again. We're imagining scary situations, right? Because we're not rooted. Very quickly, another reason is because we get the disconnect between the heart and the kidneys. Who we are and where we're going in life, that disconnection can happen from trauma. And restoring that connection also will bring the anxiety and the panic back down. But we still need good yin. And when the heart and kidneys are not connected, we're also not having a strong yin base. Okay. So we're using cold plunging to suppress the yang energy, whether that be what we are considering inflammation as a result of long distance athletics, let's say, or reoccurring thoughts that we're not able to control. And we see cold plunging as a success because it has helped us control our mind and because it has made our body physically feel better after those long endurance events or trainings. But what we have actually happening is further depletion. So if we're trying to sell cold plunging, that is a great sales pitch because it will keep you needing the cold plunge because it is never a root cause solution. If we dig into it a little bit more, why would we want to suppress the body's natural response to overtraining? Ice packs, cold plunging, cryotherapy, All of that is restricting blood flow to an area. If we are restricting blood flow, is that not the beginning of necrosis? The death of tissue? So I don't understand why we think this is a good solution. And furthermore, many people are using ice baths not for immediate relief from something that just happened, an acute problem, like, hey, I have zero problems. My health is in tip-top condition. I was outside in the yard, digging some holes for new trees I'm going to plant, and I tweaked my back. And now it's screaming, it's really inflamed. And so I want to use an ice pack or an ice bath to reduce that inflammation. That would not be my choice either, but that is drastically different from the person who says, I played baseball in high school and I've always had a tweaky shoulder. My shoulder has been bothering me for years. And you know what? Now my hip is kind of bothering me too. Sometimes my knee. Y'all, this is also a topic for another podcast episode, but this is divergent pathology. This is the body losing medium so it can no longer hold the problem in latency. And that is why you have the shoulder that's hurting, the hip that's hurting, the knee that's hurting, and it probably moves around, right? So that is not a time where you want to be getting into a cold plunge because, again, you need more yin to support your body's holding of that pathology. And if you're cold plunging, you're suppressing the yang energy. When it comes back up, you're taxing the yin because the yin has to support that yang coming up. So I'm hoping this gives you a different understanding of the Chinese medicine physiology behind cold plunging. I know that there are modern acupuncturists that do this type of thing, who even recommend it, but that is not Chinese medicine. If you don't want to practice the principles of Chinese medicine, I totally respect that, but I think you should make it clear in your practice that you are going against the principles of Chinese medicine by recommending and participating in the cold plunging yourself. Okay, so the next thing that I wanted to talk about was saunas and heated workouts, because I just got done talking to you about why we would not want to do cold plunging. So wouldn't that mean that heated workouts and saunas would be amazing for our health, right? Absolutely not. And again, we are never going to achieve health by doing extreme things. So why do our American minds think one thing over here is good, so the opposite of it will be bad, and vice versa? This is bad, so the opposite of it will be good. No, somewhere in the middle is where we're going to achieve balance. And when we achieve balance, we're going to achieve good health. So let's take the heated workouts and the sauna situation. We've talked about blood, perhaps maybe not on this podcast, but on my Instagram account, you've heard me talk about blood. It is like gold. And it is what is required for good health in Chinese medicine. It is not just the physiological substance that we think about in allopathic medicine, but it's also energetic in Chinese medicine. And blood outside of the body is sweat. So when we sweat profusely, we are draining one of our yin substances. So this means not to never sweat. When you go out for a walk around your neighborhood, you're outside doing whatever in the summer, you're naturally going to sweat. You're out for a run in the winter, not too long of a run. We're not trying to kill ourselves. You break a sweat. That is fine. That's normal. But when you go into a sauna that is 130 degrees or perhaps higher, you sit there sweating with a hat on. That is not normal. When you go into a hot yoga room that is 110 or more degrees and you do a flow workout, any kind of workout, I don't care what it is, that is not normal. This is not health supportive. Now, does it feel good? Yes. I have also done hot yoga and it almost killed me. And I don't mean because it was challenging while I was in there, though it was. I mean that it destroyed my yin and my migraines got so crazy. That's a story for another time. Why does it feel good to go into a hot room and sweat? Because you are yin deficient. When you become yin deficient, you get some form of heat. Modern acupuncturists call this deficient heat, because there is not enough yin to balance the normal amount of yang. So now we are hot, not because we have too much yang. We are hot because we don't have enough yin, the cooling. Okay. So when we get yin deficient, we get drier. Okay. if you are in perimenopause or menopause, or know anyone who has been through perimenopause or menopause, you know that a common symptom is dryness, drier skin, hair, nails, vagina. Things get drier because that is a normal transition in life where our yin declines. Okay, so now that we're dry, we're also going to have a damp response. So we don't have enough yin. That leads to heat. Heat leads to dryness. Dryness leads to a damp response. What the hell is a damp response? Some people in the normal world like understand what I'm saying when I say damp, but just to be clear, damp is pathological yin from a Chinese medicine perspective. And this can be seen in normal speak as like a balm or a salve that the body is putting on the heat, on the dryness to help you out. Just a little sidebar here. This is how Chinese medicine sees cholesterol in the arteries, the buildup of cholesterol. There is inflammation first in the arteries, and Chinese medicine would say that that is both due to emotion and also dietary and environmental factors creating an inflammation in the artery. Then the body says, let me help you with this, and takes cholesterol and uses it as a salve to put on that inflammation in hopes of quieting the inflammation. But we continue on in our same lifestyle, in our same inability to process our emotion or our past trauma. And so the body keeps responding with more and more cholesterol. And then we get to a place where we have a blocked artery and we have a heart attack, or we need a stent, or whatever the case may be. Okay, so I know that was a little sidebar, but I just wanted to explain in a very common way how we can see damp responding. Also, back to the menopause and perimenopause concepts, that is a time where naturally our yin declines. It's also a time where it's very common for women to say, I'm experiencing weight gain that I have never had before in my life. I am fluffier through the middle because the middle of our body is our most yin area. So yin is accumulating there as a result of the yin deficiency. So in Chinese medicine, we call this yin accumulation due to yin deficiency. So this is a very normal response, but you're going to a sauna, you're going to a heated workout or hot yoga is cranking that up to 100. It's exacerbating your loss of yin, and it's potentially increasing weight gain. It's potentially, I won't even say potentially, it is decreasing your yin. So we don't want a cold plunge for a different reason. The mechanics of cold plunging are a bit different, but it's resulting in the same thing, which is a decrease in yin. We don't want to go into a hot room and do yoga or stretching or a workout because we are also decreasing yin, though by a different mechanism. Now let's talk about fasting. Chinese medicine's view of metabolism is like heating a home with a fireplace. So overnight, while you have been sleeping under lots of blankets, you've been kept warm by the blankets, but no one has been awake to stoke the fire and keep it fed by logs. Okay. So when you wake up, it's probably either dead or almost dead. And it's going to be cold in your house because it's like freezing outside. So the first thing you're going to do is get out of bed and start the fire. This is how we think about metabolism. So when you wake up in the morning, you need to feed your digestive organs to get the fire going. In classical Chinese medicine text, they describe the stomach as a bubbling cauldron. You want the stomach to be warm, and you also want it to be wet on balance. So it doesn't mean that you can never eat anything that's cold or raw, but it does mean that on balance, you want it to be still warm and bubbly. And I say in modern day, think of it like a crock pot. If you put things in the crock pot, as long as you keep enough liquid in there, it stays warm and wet as long as it continues to be plugged in and cooking, right? So you want your digestive organs, you want to treat your digestive organs that way, where you're putting warm and wet food in and you're letting that flame sort of bubble, that low and slow warmth, just like a crock pot. So if we're fasting, that is essentially like waking up in the morning in a freezing cold house and being like, nah, I'll just be freezing until 2 p.m. And then at 2 p.m., I'll just like eat a huge meal and it'll be great. I'll only eat for 6 hours today. I'll only be warm for 6 hours today. That makes no damn sense. And here's why. So if you were starting a fire And if you guys have never started a fire, if you're listening to this, you're like, I'm from the city. We don't start fires, or I've never been camping. Okay. I'm from the country and I have been camping and I love a fireplace. So let me just bear with me with this example. You don't go get the largest log you can find and throw it on like in your fireplace or like in a camping, whatever you call ring, and then just throw a match in there and think that it gets lit and it's golden for the rest of the night. You have to start it with twigs. You have to start it with kindling, small things. And you might even use some paper to help it get started. But if you put only paper, you can imagine what happens, right? That stuff goes up fast into flames and then it burns out. But if you put little things that are wet, like leaves or like a branch that you just broke off of a tree or one that fell that hasn't been down very long, that stuff starts smoking when you try to light it, and it doesn't produce like a good flame. The same is true when you feed yourself things like a smoothie, fruit, yogurt, anything straight from the fridge, especially first thing in the morning, is like wet leaves. It's going to just kind of peter out. It's not good fuel for you. The opposite is also true. If your meal at 2 p.m. is 4 eggs, 3 slices of bacon, 2 pieces of toast, some oatmeal, some orange juice, coffee, that is way too much food to start your day with. So think about your digestive system like heating a house, like an old cabin with a stove fireplace. You've got to start a fire in there with small things so that it can build its flame. And then you add a little bit bigger log, maybe another one, and then the flame starts going, right? And so then you can add a larger piece of wood and have a roaring fire. So what does this mean? Let's just clarify what this means for you and your digestive fire. Good digestive fire means that you have plenty of energy. It means that it is easy for you to maintain your weight. So what I maybe should have led with is if you are a person who says, I don't understand why I keep gaining weight or I can't lose weight. I eat salads every day. Salads are not your friend. Salads require a lot of digestive energy. They're cold, they're raw, they're like putting leaves on the fireplace. We do not want a lot of salads in our diet. And when the body has to use a lot of energy to break that down, again, you're depleting the yin, you're depleting your fluids. Remember what happens when we deplete our yin? We get dryness, we get heat, and the body responds with damp to put a salve on that heat and that dryness. What does damp look like? It looks like fluffiness around your middle. Okay. It can also look like phlegm or mucus. It can also look like cholesterol, but keep that in mind when you are considering whether you might want to fast. I know that there's a lot of research that says it can be very helpful for people, but I think these days you can honestly find research that supports just about whatever you want to do. And the purpose of this podcast is really to educate you on true Chinese medicine, because as I mentioned before, I think there are a lot of modern practitioners who have really never heard the classical teachings, the classical principles. So they're operating just on the basis of like modern society. They're reading research, they're reading maybe PubMed, they're following researchers, and they're doing the best they can, but it's not based in Chinese medicine. The same thing is true of acupuncturists who are vegan. This is not something that is supported by Chinese medicine because veganism makes it very difficult to build your yin and support your yin, which we need to support good health. Cold plunging, hot workouts or saunas, and fasting, all of these things jeopardize our yin, and how well you age is directly related to how well you conserve your yin. How healthy you can be, how well you can recover from illness when it does happen is directly related to how much yin we have. So it's really important to conserve and support your yin rather than doing things that are just like blowing it out of the water. If you like to cold plunge once a year and you just enjoy doing that, or same with a hot workout, sitting in a sauna, I think that's fine. Again, I'm really big on what are the daily habits that we have that either support or destroy our health. And I think people who are building saunas at their house, who have cold plunges at their house, they're doing hot and cold therapy together. I think that is an absolute disaster for people. And I think that as we see these trends pop up and people think that the trendy, faddish, extreme thing is going to be the answer to their longstanding chronic health problem, like it may make it go away, but unless you really understand what's happening there, I don't think it is. And furthermore, if it's really making your problem go away, then why are we needing to do it on a daily basis? I think with rare exception, we shouldn't need to do something on a daily basis, like something extreme, something that's a treatment. Just like I explained, I don't want you to see me all the time. I want you to come work with me for treatments for a period of time in a way that makes sense to rebuild your body's ability to do what it is we want it to do, then without needing me. And in the beginning, we need to do that on a regular basis to retrain your body. But I'm not sure that I see a pathway for cold plunging on a daily basis, retraining your body to do anything. So next time you're considering doing something extreme, I know we just talked about 3 different things today, and there are far more that we could talk about. Just these 3 things, I hope, gives you a better understanding of why they are actually the antithesis to good health versus supporting your health.